I dedicate those claps to Kamala and her campaign for making such an outstanding VP choice. Ever since it was confirmed that Tim Walz was even considered to be a VP pick, I was like, yes, please, fucking go for him. But at the time, I was like, I know they're not gonna go with him. I thought for sure they'd go with Josh Shapiro because, one, it would be so in character for the DNC to have great momentum and then squash it at the last minute, a la both of the times Bernie Sanders ran. And two, I figured they would see Josh Shapiro as the quote-unquote safe pick because he's governor of Pennsylvania currently, and Pennsylvania is a crucial state to win in this upcoming election. He's a corporate Dem who's in favor of school vouchers, and also a hyper-Zionist who once likened students protesting the genocide in Gaza to KKK members. So I was like, of course Kamala would pick this guy, but she didn't. She picked Tim Walz, and I couldn't be happier. One, he is an excellent attack dog for Kamala, as evidenced by him basically kickstarting the Republicans Are Weird attack. Two, his tenure as governor in Minnesota is pretty much unmatched in this country. Here's two bullet lists that Kyle Kulinski posted on Twitter that just scratched the surface of Walz's record. Universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300, 12 weeks paid family sick leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave, banned conversion therapy, red flag laws for guns, universal background checks for guns, automatic voter registration, free public college, ban on PFAS, forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectorial bargaining for nursing home workers. And here's the other list. Opposed Wall Street bailouts in 2008, voted against outsourcing deals, 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, banned non-compete clauses, raised minimum wage for small businesses, raised taxes on multinational corporations, protected gender-affirming care, banned medical providers from withholding care over debt, protected construction workers from wage theft, massive Minnesota infrastructure bill. And a lot of that has been done while Dems have just a one-seat majority in Minnesota. Compare that to the state I live in, New York, a deep blue state, and you have chuckle fucks like Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul feeding into Republican talking points and fear-mongering about immigrants coming into this country with the sole intent to commit crime. And it's been so funny watching conservatives melt down over Tim Walz being the VP pick because they have fucking nothing on the guy. You can tell they were just salivating at the idea of Kamala picking Josh Shapiro because he would be much easier to attack. He has that scandal where he was allegedly covering up sexual harassment that was committed against one of his top aides. There's also another scandal where Josh Shapiro helped cover up what was very likely a murder of a woman named Ellen Greenberg, who in January of 2011 was found dead with over 20 stab wounds. 10 of those stab wounds were in her back, and her death was ruled a suicide. And in 2018, when Josh Shapiro was Pennsylvania's Attorney General, he was tasked with re-reviewing the case, and he reaffirmed that the death was a suicide. Shit like this is why Josh Shapiro would have been a horrendous VP pick. Maybe he would have locked in Pennsylvania, but imagine being a median voter in other critical swing states where Josh Shapiro has zero sway and hearing about stuff like this. Would you be enthused to vote for a ticket that included a guy with this much negative baggage? I doubt you would, and it would be Christmas for right-wingers to be able to hone in on this shit and use it as ammo to attack Harris's campaign. But what do they have on Tim Walz? He's a commie. Why? Because he wants kids to be able to have access to meals at school. He raised corporate tax rates, which can contribute to better infrastructure in Minnesota and better quality of life for its citizens. He wants working class people in Minnesota to earn fair and livable wages. Oh my god, this guy is such a fucking monster. The talking point about him being a communist might work in a right-wing echo chamber, but average people look at policies like Tim Walz's and they're like, sign me the fuck up. Why don't we have policies like what Minnesota has on a federal level? Policies such as Tim Walz's disproportionately benefit average working class people and not wealthy donors like most of the politicians in this country adhere to. And I think it would be fantastic to have someone like Tim Walz be second in command and at least have some influence on how Kamala would run the country should she win in November. Oh, but Tim Walz refused to serve in Iraq and never actually fought in combat, so therefore his military service is invalid. First off, him not serving in Iraq is pretty based in my book because we went to that country under the false pretense of there being weapons of mass destruction that didn't actually fucking exist. The soldiers who died there there senselessly lost their lives because they were sold a lie by wealthy politicians who directly benefited from the military-industrial complex. Second, most veterans don't even actually see combat. There are so many people in this country who have never even been in the fucking military, who probably watched Saving Private Ryan and think that's what military service is like all the time. Your guy, who is gunning to be second in command, J.D. Vance, who was stationed in Iraq, by his own admission, was never in a gunfight. A journalist once asked him, "You fought in Iraq?" and he answered, "I was never in a firefight myself, but I've always told the truth about my Marine Corps service." And Donald Trump himself is a fucking draft dodger. He was a millionaire's son who conveniently began to have bone spurs around the time the Vietnam draft began. So you Trumpers are the last fucking people to call someone's military service into question. But Tim Walz governed Minnesota during the BLM riots, and look how chaotic the state was during that time. That talking point is also invalid because now there is audio from a phone call that Trump made in 2020 where he praises Tim Walz for his handling of the riots back then. That was probably the biggest sticking points Republicans had on Tim Walz, and now that has evaporated. And now we get to weirder critiques like Tim Walz making it mandatory for all school bathrooms in Minnesota to carry tampons. And this has given him the nickname Tampon Tim. Oh my god, hygiene products that like half of this country's population uses are in Minnesota school bathrooms. What are we in fucking third grade? Yes, people with vaginas have periods, and this includes students in schools. This shouldn't be a gross taboo thing because again, like half of the fucking people in this country have periods. And you Trumpers wonder why so many people call you weird. The lack of self-awareness is astounding. And of course, there's the he's for chopping little boys' penises off, and he's pro-abortion. Which, yes, continue talking about trans people and how you're anti-abortion, because those are totally winning issues, as evidenced by how you fucking floundered at midterms. So overall, great pick from Kamala, and oh my god, I need the J.D. Vance and Tim Walz debate right now. I have a feeling J.D. Vance will try to worm his way out of that, but please, I need it to happen. It would be like heroin straight into my veins. And of course, a Kamala victory is by no means guaranteed, but I actually feel hope. And it's weird because I'm still so used to feeling despair like I did before Joe Biden dropped out. And you know what? It actually feels good, especially since, you know, Trump, the GOP, and its electorate are shitting themselves right now. I know the good feeling won't last forever, but let me enjoy the moment, goddammit. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.